This is the Friday, June 10th quarterly business meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission. We are meeting here at the Indiana State Library, and we're also meeting on Zoom. So I would like to call the meeting to order, and I would also like to thank Walter Knabe and his wife Kelly for hosting us last night at the Walter Knabe studio. That was lovely.
Pretty wild room. I didn't know what I was getting in for.
I hear you. I don't know if everybody knows, but Walter, I found out last night, is a nationally known artist. So
Yes.
We are humbled in your presence.
Oh, no, I'm just, I'm humbled to be part of this. So I think we're at least even.
I'd like to begin with a roll call this morning.
Great. I'll handle that. Just as a note, Stephanie Fendler has had to go out of town on a family emergency, so she will not be with us today. So I will be handling her duties in her stead. So I will start by calling the roll. Lisa Abbott, Alberta Barker,
Here.
Chad Bolzer,
Here.
Raina Bradley,
Present.
Ruth Ann Cowling,
Here.
Dave Heist,
Here.
Greg Hull,
Here.
Walter Knabe,
Here.
Laurie McRobbie,
Here.
Jake Oakman,
Present.
Kelsey Pieper, Sophia Soto,
Here.
Dusty Stemmer. Dusty's not with us yet. I know she's joining us. Ann Valentine.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. We also have several new people that I would like to ask to introduce themselves, beginning with Raina.
Hi, good morning. I am Raina Bradley here representing Fort Wayne in District 3. Do you want anything else in particular?
Tell a little bit about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. My background is in architecture. I grew up in Southfield, Michigan. And have spent much of my career really focusing on the health of communities and people via design. So I first worked in the healthcare industry in architecture on the East Coast, and then began working on single-family residential rehabs before I came to Fort Wayne. Started doing still single-family residential rehabs, but also a lot of placemaking efforts, including building out pocket parks, getting our crime down 65%, getting banners up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Also grant writer extraordinaire.
Hired.
You're gonna regret
I really see art as an awesome way to celebrate people and places, and for cities and municipalities and governments to communicate that everyone matters, that everyone has a voice, and that everyone's story is important to the fabric of our community. So thank you for having me.
Well, we are delighted to have you, so welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
Jordan.
Is Jordan?
She was gonna attend a Zoom. She's been ill.
Okay,
So,
okay.
she's not online. She is somewhere in the universe, and I'm sure regretful for not being here today.
Yeah, she's our new Artist Services Program Manager. So she joined us back in April, and we've just been delighted to have her. So.
And the lovely Lucia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lucia Walker, and I am the summer governor's intern in the communications team.
And Wendy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy. I'm a programs intern this summer. I'm working mainly with Paige and Stephanie, and I'm enjoying my work so far. Stephanie and Paige are my favorite supervisor ever.
Should get $20.
I love it.
If you are both in school, can you share where you're attending?
Yes, I'm a student at Indiana University in Bloomington studying arts management. So I'm doing online school called Western Governors University.
Oh, yeah.
I'm technically a senior. Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's all the new people, so we'll get on with the agenda. And you have before us, before you the agenda, and the March 11 meeting minutes. So if there are no corrections, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes.
So moved. Second.
We do need to do a roll call, so bear with me. Signified by saying aye. Lisa Abbott, Alberta Barker,
Aye.
Chad Bolzer,
Aye.
Raina Bradley,
Aye.
Ruth Ann Cowling,
Aye.
Dave Heist,
Aye.
Greg Hull,
Aye.
Walter Knabe,
Aye.
Laurie McRobbie,
Aye.
Jake Oakman,
Aye.
Kelsey Pieper,
Aye.
Sophia Soto,
Aye.
Dusty Stemmer,
Aye.
and Valentine.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
You'll also have the consent agenda. And the items that were submitted for commission approval are the fiscal year 22 year-to-date financials, the cultural trust draw, including the designation of contract signing authority, and the fiscal year 23 officer reaffirmation for fiscal year 23. Arts learning to include the Region 12 Arts Partnership. We also have the reports for review, the Cultural Trust Report, the Communications Report, Commissioner and Staffing Update, Creating Aging Webinar with FSSA, On-Ramp 2.0 and Next Level Trainings, Indiana Communities Institute, and partnerships. Does anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda for further discussion at a later time? No? Okay, then I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Alberta Barker,
Aye.
Chad Bolzer,
Aye.
Raina Bradley,
Aye.
Ruth Ann Cowling,
Aye.
Dave Heist,
Aye.
Greg Hull,
Aye.
Walter Knabe,
Aye.
Laurie McRobbie,
Aye.
Jake Oakman,
Aye.
Kelsey Pieper,
Aye.
Sophia Soto,
Aye.
Dusty Stemmer,
Aye.
and Valentine.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to committee reports for Committee on the Future. I think Maya is going to be presenting the fiscal year 23 budget.
Fantastic. Okay. Chapin, if you or whoever's advancing slides. Fantastic. Okay, next slide. There we go. Thank you. All right. So you have in your packet the full, you have a memo and then the line item budget. And I want to talk through just a few bits and pieces of it for you before you approve. This is one of the big items of action in our June quarterly business meeting every year is the budget, right? So just as a quick overview, you see the state of Indiana appropriation, and just as a reminder, we're in the second year of a 2-year budget cycle. FY23, which starts July 1, is the second year of our budget year. Our appropriation remains the same, and we've received notification that what they call our budget holdback or our reserve target is also the same this coming year, which is 2%, which essentially means for us that we hold 2% of our budget back and we don't actually spend it. And so what we always indicate is the net of that 2% holdback, so we aren't tempted to spend it. So that number stays the same, and it is the same as it was in FY22. Under the National Endowment for the Arts, we've received notification of our FY23 award. It is a higher number, which is great. An increase of $64,000. That is due to an increase in appropriation to the National Endowment for the Arts in the federal budget. And that has happened over the last couple of years, and that is good news. So that every state received a significant bump of about that amount. The National Endowment for the Arts is required by legislation for 40% of their budget to go to the state arts agency. So when they get a bump, we get a bump, which is, again, always great. You'll see a line item under the National Endowment for FY22. We have some remainder FY22 dollars left because, to go in the weeds for just a second, we use around $250,000 of our federal grant every year to backfill salaries because we don't get, we don't have our salaries fully funded by the state. So we have for years and years backfilled salary with our federal award. And because we have been short-staffed, we have not expended those dollars and we have those dollars available to us. And we are applying those to the FY23 budget to help backfill the increase in arts organization and arts project support that we continue to see year over year. We were able to do that in this year's budget as well. And we're able to do it in FY23. And I said this last year, and I'm saying it again this year, probably this is gonna be the last time we can do that. Because we expect to be fully staffed very soon. And we expect to spend every nickel of our federal FY23 federal dollars on regranting and staff and so forth. So we're able to backfill this upcoming year, but don't anticipate being able to do that again. 3 external partnership funding stories we want to take in the budget. The Department of Education, our arts integration workshops, through the great work of Stephanie Findler and her great relationship building with the Department of Education. We have $85,000 funding from the Department of Education, and they are going toward the arts integration workshops, which you have information about in your packet. That's great. That's a first-time partnership for us, and we're really excited about that. We will be drawing the remainder of our Hoffman Trust, which is held for us at the Brown County Community Foundation, to also support those arts integration workshops. And so we will be drawing the remainder of that and putting it toward the arts integration workshops. And then Indiana Economic Development Corporation is funding our next level trainings for creatives all over the state that you have information about in your packet, to the tune of $150,000. We're delighted for that investment in our work with creatives. And those, I think that's just a testament to the great work that we do, right? It's a great work that our program staff does. Jordan's heading that up. And Stephanie?
Can I just add one quick
Yeah.
question? The money for the arts integration workshops are also going to fellowship.
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
not spending all that
Yeah.
money on a
Thank you.
workshop.
Thank you. Yeah. Part of that program is 2 in-person workshops and then 25 fellowships of $3,000 each. So yeah, that arts ed money goes to hosting the workshops as well as the fellowships. So thanks, Stephanie, for the clarification. And that $150,000 is one-time CARES Act money, but we are building a strong relationship with IEDC, and we hope that this means additional investment from them in the future. We've shown them that we can spend smart, spend fast, and get to the kinds of audiences and stakeholders that they want to get in front of, which is creative entrepreneurs. So we're excited for that program and that training and what comes next. Lastly, $5,000 from the trust. You have within your consent agenda approval to move $5,000 from the trust that we will be putting toward the Arts Trust projects that will get special spotlight communications throughout the year to help raise the visibility of the Arts Trust. Because we know that when we tell the story of the Arts Trust license plates, guess what? We sell more Arts Trust license plates. No surprise there. So this is something we've been doing for the last few years. Now that our comms department's going to be fully staffed here pretty soon, we expect that communication to be ramping up and for those plate sales to start to tick back in the right direction. So we think it's a great strategy and we're sticking with it. So all of that comes to $4,888,190. That is less than our FY22 budget because we don't have the ARPA funds that the National Endowment for the Arts provided for us last year. So that number is lower than FY22 because we don't have that federal relief. So any questions about the revenue piece at the moment? Great, fantastic. Okay, next slide, please. All right, expenses, and this is not all the expenses because when you add all this up, this does not come to $4,888,190. So I'm just pulling out a few of the highlights there. So staffing, not fully staffed, but we feel like this is a good number. This is a lower number than what we projected in the FY22 budget because we had, or Lewis had, and I it was a reasonable expectation at the time that we might add an additional staff member. We are not putting that in as a budget target for FY23. We just like to get staff to where we need to be right now, and then we'll think about staff additions later. So that number is a little bit lower. Grants and programs, arts organization and arts project support. Paige is going to talk through numbers and why those numbers look like what they do here in just a few minutes. But just broadly, our arts organization funding was reduced by 5%, and our arts project support is about at 78 to 80% of the request. And Paige will go into some details and talk about some of the factors that factor into that. Cultural districts, we are funding all 12 cultural districts. We're recommending them being funded at $5,000 apiece for $60,000. That plays a little bit into our cultural district conversation that we'll have shortly. But we have invested within them for the last few years, and we will continue that. And that's a slight bump up than what we did over in FY22. We've set aside some pools of funding for artists and communities because we need to get back into that work. Some of that will probably be some capacity building. Some of that may be some interrogation, investigation of where we should be going with artists and communities. But we need to begin to be reinvesting in those groups. You will remember we pulled back when our budget was reduced by 15% in 2021. We put on pause Arts in the Parks, as well as our individual advancement program for artists. We're not recommending putting those programs back in, but we need to think about what might replace them, whether it's a program similar or something entirely different. But we need a little bit of funding to sort of help us get through that sort of planning and conversation phase. And then we have a line for equity, and that line will be, haven't firmly defined what we're going to be spending that on. More than likely, some of it will be consultant support to continue into arts project support, investigation, and other phases of the agency's equity work. And it may end up being some equity interventions. We're not there yet, but we wanted to put some funding aside as a placeholder as our consultants begin that arts organization support work, which we'll hear more about here in a few minutes. Boy, what did I do there? So regional arts partners, that is not a correct number. That number should be, hang on just a second. That number, I will say that is an increase. We did increase, should be 215,000 for the regional arts partners. And I have no idea why I put the Hoffman Trust in there. So sorry. Burning the midnight oil, but I can tell you that the total is 4,888,190 when you look at the entire itemized line by line in your packet. Happy to answer any questions related to the expenses that are in your packet or that are outlined in the memo. And I think it's a reasonable budget for where we are. It puts forth some funding for us to investigate some areas that we need to be in a little bit more, but I think we're going into an FY24-25 budget development when the legislature goes back into session in January. Obviously don't know what the outcome of that will be, but I don't think what we're budgeting for makes promises that we would not be able to deliver if our budget was radically different in FY20. Does that make sense? Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Any
I have a question.
Yes.
Maya,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
your regional art partners budget is not 5,000, it's 215?
Yeah, 215, and that is a
Okay.
slight increase. Yeah, thank you, Dusty.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's all I need to know. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's an 8%. I want to say it's about an 8% increase for them. Again, we've asked them, they have really been delivering during the pandemic and certainly before that, doing lots more work with us and for us. Felt like it was time to reinvest. So
The other one's probably the next level training.
yeah, that probably is. Yeah, probably so. Any questions, concerns, comments about the budget? Yes, Ruth Ann.
Did you, on the arts integration fellowship,
Yeah.
did you say there was a change in that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
no.
thought you did.
Yeah,
I thought
no.
It was the same.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it is.
Got it.
Yeah. What I was doing was intimating that all the funding was going to the workshops. So, yeah, so there's just a tiny bit of money going to the workshops and the bulk of it's going toward the fellowships. So, yeah, a great question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, there's a big difference between fiscal year 23 and 22. So those grants made a huge difference. If there are no other questions, I'll take a motion to approve the budget for fiscal year 23 as presented by Michael.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, roll call, sorry, roll call. And just as a point of procedure, unfortunately, the folks on the phone cannot vote on the budget because state of Indiana remote meeting law means that remote meeting participants cannot vote on annual budgets. So I won't be calling your name, but doesn't mean we're not thinking about you. So my apologies if I don't call your name. So
I didn't want to vote on the budget anyway.
thank you. Yes. May the record note that Jake supports the budget even though he can't vote. So. Okay, Lisa Abbott. Alberta Barker.
Aye.
Chad Bolzer.
Aye.
Raina Bradley. Ruth Ann Cowling.
Aye.
Dave Heist.
Aye.
Greg Hull.
Aye.
Walter Knabe.
Aye.
Laurie McRobbie.
Aye.
Kelsey Pieper.
Aye.
Ann Valentine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much, guys. We're excited to spend this on behalf of the citizens of Indiana. So we'll get going on that.
And thanks for keeping us compliant with state law.
Yeah, try, yeah.
Appreciate that.
If Stephanie were here, she would be doing that. So, yeah, it's interestingly enough, you can't just, because I printed it out just in case it came up. Remote votes cannot be cast for the following: adoption of the annual budget, a reduction in personnel, establishment or increasing of a fee or ticket price, establishment or increase of a penalty, or the establishment, raising, or renewing of a tax. So the more you know. So there you go. So that's part of our public meeting policy. So thank you, everybody.
Before we go on, I'd like to welcome Lisa Abbott and Kelsey Pieper, who joined us. So welcome.
And we have one of our regional partner representatives here.
I'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Kim Wadholm. I'm with the Columbus Area Arts Council in Region 9.
Awesome. Until Sherry Stark was said hello. Okay, moving on to the strategic plan. Mike or Chad, I don't know which one.
Chad, you want to start? What do you want to, yeah.
Yeah, just for everybody, as you're taking a look at the details of the strategic plan, just to give an overview, kind of thinking through where we are, which is we're right now currently operating under the bridge plan. Our previous strategic plan expired. We are doing that in 22 and 23 for a new strategic plan to be in place in 2024. What that means, though, in the summer of 2022 is that we are preparing right now, from now, and you'll see it in the plans, to write the strategic plan from January 2023 throughout the year so that it can be ready to go on that January 1, 2024. That seems like a really long time, and yet every time we speak about it, it gets closer. And literally in the committee on the future, as it was being presented, we realized that it was actually upon us. So part of the first part of the planning statement. So I also want to just compliment staff and the commission for the transition of this strategic plan into some real intentional flexibility and understanding of what plans need to be for organizations like ours. They need to reflect what we experienced over the last 2 years. We need to be not ready for that because no one would be ready, but we need to also have plans that reflect the ability to transition quickly. And I think that that's what you're going to see in all of this as it is not only in the bridge plan, but also as we the plan from 24 to 28. So there you go.
Thanks, Chad. Fantastic. Thank you. So here's some of the few differences between the 17 and the 17 to 21 plan development. So as Chad mentioned, we're going to do a framework versus a plan. So hopefully much more nimble document at the end of the day versus a plan. Although our 17 plan wasn't particularly cumbersome, it was fairly, had a lot of areas that maybe kept us from being as nimble as we wanted to be. We're going to be moving to a 6-member advisory committee as opposed to a 30-ish, I think, which is what we had last time. So kind of a lean and mean planning group, advisory group.
And can you remind me who will comprise that, or what you're seeking to have?
Great question. So Chad has already agreed to be part of that. Yeah. And, we're going to be looking for diverse representation, which is what we always do when we put together any kind of planning group or really anything that we do at the
But
commission.
not just 6 commissioners.
Yeah, not 6 commissioners. Yeah. If there's commissioner interest, certainly let me know. But our hope is that we will, we're going to touch people from all over the state. So it will be diverse regionally, we'll be diverse in all the ways that are important for us to be diverse and inclusive as an agency. So Chad's already been volunteered for that, but if there are any other commissioners that want to sit, please let me know. And I say 6, could go up to 8, but it certainly won't. I'm hoping to keep us out of the double digits because I think that's just challenging when you're trying to do something statewide. And and so we will be bringing the proposed group to the commission in September for your approval because they'll get started shortly after that. So we're going to start this summer to start recruiting. And so I may be reaching out to some of you to say any thoughts about folks in your region that might be good for that. Last time we did this, we had a consultant that worked with us sort of throughout the process to Chad's advice, and I think this is good. We're probably going to wait on that consultant piece and bring someone in later in the process to help us actually do the writing of the framework versus sort of the facilitating of the meetings and so forth. And that I think is helped by the fact we'll have a small committee. I mean, part of what the consultant was doing was just doing a lot of people wrangling, which is probably not the best work a consultant can do for you in that situation. And we may bring in somebody to help us with some data analysis, possibly, and we would probably do that earlier rather than later. Another really important difference that we hope is that we're going to ask the creative sector to be a really active part of the process. We put some funding aside in this fiscal year that will carry over into the next fiscal year to do some work, asking the creative sector to actually go out and engage on our behalf with citizens on getting some planning input. So I have not yet put together that engagement plan yet, but I'm going to be working on that this summer. I want to say we stole this idea from, it might have been Idaho, I think, that actually hired artists to go out and do some facilitated town halls and conversations in their communities about what their arts commission should be doing. So however it looks, we do want to have the creative sector really actively engaged in it so that the plan really is of and for and with them. So that's a different feature for our next framework development. And then lastly, we didn't really do this the last time, and I think it's important. We're contemplating a statewide climate perception survey, just kind of where everyone is. Our national association, the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, can do this work for us. And we are in conversation with them right now about the possibility of doing some sort of statewide climate perception survey, because I think that's important. We know how our grantees are doing, and we know how those folks that interact with us are doing, at least as it relates to their grants making work and how they engage with us. But again, and this speaks to the work that we're doing in equity right now, we don't know what people are telling us, and we don't know what people think and what they think of us who aren't engaged with us at all. So we think a climate/perception survey might be worth it there. So let's see. Next slide is just sort of an overview of the phases. We're in the pre-phase period now, and that will go until August, and then we'll kick off phase one. And again, really focused on trying to come up with strategic impacts, coming up with metrics. That's going to be an important feature of this plan, is that we're actually going to build the metrics of the plan at the same time we build the framework, right? So we know that we're at what we're actually measuring to know that we've actually accomplished things that we want to accomplish. So so that's a really key part of the plan development there. Happy to answer any questions about that. And then I've got a couple of questions to ask you specifically. Sort of pre-planning. Yes, Laurie.
Question about essentially the idea work that we're doing and how that integrates. Particularly going back to your exceptional address to the, not to the nation, but anyway, your conversation Tuesday night in the listening session.
Yeah.
How does that integrate?
Yeah, great question. And we will absolutely be bringing everything that they're doing into this process. I mean, because again, they are having conversations and engaging with grantees, non-grantees, whoever's engaging with them in the process. And so we will be absolutely taking what they are learning and bringing that into that process. And the way we've timed this out is that the strategic framework will begin right as at least the bulk of the equity work as it relates to stakeholder engagement will have ended. So we will have essentially all of that information that they have gathered to bring into the planning process, which will really, I think, help us. And Laurie, what it'll do, I think, is help us identify, again, they're talking about funding, right? So that's the universe that they're going to be giving us.
Hi, did something happen? We can't hear you anymore.
So, and launching, and we'll talk about this as we talk about the equity process, but we'll be going into arts project support and then kind of looking at other parts of the agency through the equity lens. We'll be bringing all of that into the planning process. So, but yeah, great question. And hopefully the timing works. I mean, we sort of designed it in such a way that those two processes sort of connect with each other. And we're going to need to have a pretty top-notch, that's why Chad's on this group, helping us sort of integrate all of that learning together. That's going to be an important piece of it. But great question. Any other questions about planning, about the process? And then I've got a couple of questions to ask you. Anything, any concerns? All right, fantastic. Next slide. So, yeah, ping on there. I don't know why I animated. I don't know why I animated the.
Just wanted to make it more fun and.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, there we go. Go back. Yeah, thank you. So just to make it more difficult, we are this summer. I and other staff members are out in the field quite a bit. I'm doing some roundtables with Accelerate Indiana municipalities, chatting with folks informally. Most of these people aren't arts people that I'll be engaging with. And what I wanted to do for a couple of minutes is, usually as part of these conversations, I'm talking about what the commission does and our impact and our programs and how they can engage with us. And then I turn the conversation around and then ask them, questions like, what should we know? How can we support you better? What do we need? What do we need to know about you? How can we support your work? And I'm wondering, from you guys, are there questions that you'd like me to be asking when I'm out in the field, talking to just folks, not necessarily arts people? Is there anything you'd like me to ask that you think would be useful? Again, this is just pre-planning stuff, but I've already made some notes from a couple of conversations I've had. Anything, just talking to AIM is Accelerate Indiana Municipality. So that audience is primarily elected officials and community leaders and so forth. So they aren't arts people. But is there anything that you think I should be asking them when I'm interacting?
I think that's a great question. And I'd like to percolate on the answer.
Okay. Okay.
But I think it's a great question.
Okay.
I don't know that I have an actual specific question, and I imagine you are already exploring this based on what I've read through here, but just the connection between quality of place and particularly in rural Indiana and with the arts, and how if people understand that that adds to quality of place, or if there is an understanding of what quality of place means, just exploring that concept.
This is Dusty. First of all, you're great at explaining it, and I know you'll do it simply, because I think people get, especially if you're doing not high population places like Carmel or big cities like Indy, when you're more in the rural part of Indiana, I think it's hard for people to understand that arts isn't just drawing and painting and whatever. It's, it encompasses a much greater scope. But I think you have to really keep it simple with no acronyms. and I think you have to start the conversation on what do they think art is in their community. Maybe they don't even think it's a viable thing because they just have a vision that puts the art idea in a very small enclosed box. They don't realize it could be so great for community involvement and things like that, which I guess I just didn't even answer your question. Sorry.
No, you did. You totally did. You gave me a fantastic question, Dusty. I think that's great.
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. No, it's fantastic.
If I could tag on to
Sure.
both Dusty and Ann's comments, I think especially in rural parts of the state, it'd be really interesting to find from them how they think we could be more impactful in their communities. I think there are some folks that probably, they certainly need the education. I think you're doing a great job of letting people understand what we do. But is there a way we could do things differently that would have more impact for them? That I think would be interesting to hear.
That's great.
I think I'd be curious to know what the unsung assets are
Oh,
in the
okay.
community. So understanding our strengths, but also, if you had to talk about the strength that you think doesn't get quite enough shine or quite enough resources, what would that be? And perhaps then as a follow-up, what resource would help that particular asset or individual or organization realize more of their full potential?
Fantastic.
Maybe kind of related to all these other comments, but also who would they see as key partners? And particularly, I think in their, talking mostly about rural communities, but I think that applies everywhere. I'm struck by how many times I have to point out to people who are mainly in the business sector, sometimes in big companies, that the arts have a huge economic impact on the state of Indiana. And when you say that, you'll get oh yeah, I guess that's true, right? But it's obviously not something that I think for a lot of the economic drivers in the state that is on their radar. So I'm just thinking if there are other partnerships that can be explored, people who are in different parts of the state may have a better sense of who the people are, that indirectly are going to help support the arts in that region, but also I think strengthen the commission.
That's great. Thank you, Lori.
And then maybe supplying that information to the regional arts partner of key people.
Right.
To contacting or sharing information.
Yeah.
We do have documentation of the financial impacts. And
we do.
The fact that the arts are a barometer for the quality of life.
Right.
In every sector.
I know I was speaking with one of the regional partners last night, and actually, talking about the government leaders and when they go to recruit businesses to the community, it's like many times arts isn't even brought up in the conversation, and it needs to be. So obviously, if you're talking with community leaders, I think that economic impact dollars would be very helpful. And maybe bring it more to the forefront of the conversation.
I know in a lot of the smaller communities, retention is a really big challenge. So making those connections, I think, is important as well.
Yeah, it is not and this isn't a question, this is a input, but it is not a tenet of a framework for business retention and expansion programs in economic development circles. It's just not, it's not present and should be because of all the things that are said, but it's not seen as something that you put into a plan to present to potential employers.
Right.
Yes. Are you, as you do your community engagement, are you engaging people under the age of 18 as well?
Not currently, no.
I recommend doing that. I mean, especially as we're thinking about the future of arts and the future of our communities.
I think that's fantastic.
Kids are more on the cutting edge naturally than the rest of them.
Well,
and I just think if we want to grow in our community, that's conducive to them. That we should integrate them.
That could unlock what we might do with the creative sector in the framework planning process.
Perfect.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah.
But another way too, I mean, who are the key influencers in this community? And it may not be the prominent names. It could be the person who runs the food bank or, you know, just really getting a grip on the formal and the informal influencers.
But I think sharing with the people that you talk to, if you have an example of a small community that has become more vibrant with the arts and how they took hold of that and advance themselves. Instead of just saying, you know, these are what you need to do, give them an example that it can be done, has been done.
Like who are the innovators, who are the avant-gardes, who are the thought leaders?
I think that's really important. We're not here to like,
Yeah.
to like make them destination. They're already a destination. And what do we need to know to help amplify what's already amazing about this place?
Absolutely.
To do this with them, not for them.
The destination. My reminder of what's been going on with Indiana.
IDDC, Indiana Destination Development Corporation.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
I know we've talked with them, so.
Yeah, so Connie, you want to say a couple of things of what's popping with them right now? Yeah.
Absolutely. So they had a very exciting week. They just released a new campaign that is going to be a wonderful toolkit for folks around the state to use. That's not our partnership with them though, and that is very quickly approaching in the next couple of weeks. We're working on the release timeline, but the Indiana Arts and Culture Passport will be launched in the year. It is representative of all 92 counties of the state. It has over 200 arts and culture sites in all of our 92 counties. And it's going to be a wonderful asset to direct folks into the really wonderful creative spaces in the different communities around our state. We're really looking forward to that launch, really excited about the representation. And we're really excited to partner with them on that project. And as soon as, you know, the timeline of that release is available and we have some of those assets to share with you, we will do that certainly. And we'll keep in touch on that. But it's been a great process and we're excited for this partnership to you know, come to fruition and the release here very soon.
And just as a reminder, the Passport is an online app, isn't it? Online app, boy, am I showing my age? An app for your phone that allows you to check in at locations. And after you check in to a certain number of locations, you get it's gamification. It's a gamification of the visitor experience. And so after you check into a certain number of locations, you get this premium and then certain number. And then it goes up to someone who checks into 100 arts and cultural locations around the state gets a handcrafted puzzle by Bloomington Puzzle Maker, Mark Cheetah, and Press Puzzles. So anyway, Connie's done just huge work with this. And we are delighted to partner with IDDC. We think it's just the beginning of what we can do. They on their own volition have launched a statewide mural program that will include this new brand. And we are trying to help work with them and as we can. And again, we're delighted when we see other agencies reaching out and engaging with the arts. It's a beautiful thing, right? We wish everybody would just hand us the money and let us do it, but sometimes they don't do that, and that's fine, right? We want to support them in all the ways that we do it, and we celebrate the fact that they are, do you remember roughly how many murals they're doing?
Oh, it's around between 40 and 50.
40, 50 murals around the state. So again, we're happy they're doing that. We're happy they're recognizing and leveraging the arts to help build visibility to places around the state. So those things are coming, and we anticipate more, Lori, soon, more partnerships with them soon. So, but stay tuned on the passport. We're excited about that. So anyway, this has been a rich discussion, guys, about this. Thank you so much. You've given me tons of work and to think about, and I love it. And actually, some of this may fill in some of our initial conversations when we actually get the strategic framework group together. These are really rich questions for me to think about. So thank you for that. That's all I've got on the framework plan development. Is that an action item? It is. So if we can, Alberta will accept the motion.
Exactly right. Motion to approve the planning overview as presented.
So moved. Second.
And roll call.
All right. Lisa Abbott.
Aye.
Alberta Barker.
Aye.
Chad Bolzer.
Aye.
Raina Bradley.
Aye.
Ruth Ann Cowling.
Aye.
Dave Heist.
Aye.
Greg Hull.
Aye.
Walter Knabe.
Aye.
Lori McRobbie.
Aye.
Jake Oakman.
Aye.
You can vote, Jake. Good. Kelsey Pieper. Sophia Soto.
Aye.
Dusty Stemmer. She's probably stepped away. Ann Valentine.
Oh, sorry. I was on mute. Sorry. Aye.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Thanks, Dusty and Ann.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries.
Okay. Moving on with the programs, grants and services then. Paige, I've got you up for discussion on equity.
Yeah, we want to, at the top of the key, I want to introduce you to our consultants who are leading us through the process to investigate and identify how we can re-strategize our arts organization support program. As we've identified some inequities that strongly exist in that program, but we really engaging with our study group that we had from the commission to help figure out how to move forward with this process. Lisa, thank you. She was very assertive in making sure that we really brought the field along in this process, and we took that to heart. And Maya just recently did the state address, but under the guidance of this wonderful team, LaVon Williams and Jinsu Preston, who are here today to talk to you about the process moving forward and sort of the timeline that we're looking at as we strategize to move forward. And hopefully, if we can, which is really the goal, to launch the new program guidelines in December as a result of the commission meeting and accepting the staff recommendations on that. But we're far from that point yet. And that's why we have these wonderful folks who are here today who can chat with you about the process. So Anne, you want to go ahead and start, Anne, or LaVon, either one?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ann Jinsu Preston. I use she, her pronouns. I'm located on the sacred lands of the Dakota people, also known as Minneapolis, Minnesota. My consulting areas are research, evaluation, governance, with strategy sort of woven through all three of those. I will be overseeing the project and have my hands in all parts of it. And we're really excited about, or I'm really excited about this project because I've done work with other statewide arts and other agencies to really engage with constituencies to create more equitable policies, structures, and engagement with the people that they serve. And the arts have also been a part of my entire life, both as a practicing visual artist, a musician, on and off throughout my life. And so it allows me to bring these two passion areas together, both personal and professional. And I'm going to pass it over to Levon.
Thank you, Ann. Good morning. Levon Williams. My pronouns are he, him. I'm originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana, but currently reside in Reston, Virginia, the traditional lands of the Manahoac people. I'm primarily an equity, inclusion, and anti-racism consultant for nonprofit organizations, primarily arts-based organizations. I spent about 10 years working in specifically in the field of museums. I also have a degree in arts administration from Indiana University. I'll be providing support as a facilitator for the project, an opportunity to support an arts org from my home state, really leaning into living out their commitment to operating in more equitable, inclusive, and accessible ways is what really excites me about this project. And not with us this morning, but I want to introduce a couple of the other folks that are on our team, is my colleague Kai Furley Hedrick. She is based on Seneca, the traditional Seneca lands, Western New York. She'll be co-leading the web equity mapping process, and that is launching this month, and supporting other facilitated activities later this summer.
And Benjamin, also, who's not with us today, is also based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he will be primarily supporting the project in a research capacity. So, you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So understanding that IAC is on an equity journey, and we've been having open dialogues with IAC staff about our design and where they feel they can stretch and continue to build on the work that they've been doing since 2015. So we've been working on, we know how, well, as we've been working with them, we know how important community engagement is in the design and throughout the project. So we will be gathering feedback to identify the specific equity needs and improvements for inclusion, diversity, equity, and access to current programs and grant making from statewide constituencies. And our goal is to really reach a broad group of participants from across the state, including current grantees, but also those who've been ineligible or haven't, or maybe not know about IAC grant funding, and to intentionally work to include as many perspectives that the existing grant-making infrastructures have underserved. We bring a core team with both diverse backgrounds and expertise, and we'll be leveraging an even broader group of facilitators to help us engage with folks across the state. We're offering several sessions at different times of the day, and offer sessions where folks will be reviewing the work in the evenings as well. Key and critical to our work is to ensure that participants who give their input and feedback are really valued for what they contribute. We all know when we give feedback to someone, we want to make sure that folks are keeping track, that we know that that it's impacting the work, and we can actually hear that we can hear something, a summary or something that we've participated in, that we can see what actually came out of those sessions. So we'll make sure that we're closing the feedback loop, providing some kind of something back to folks who participated, and share that out along the way. You'll see that we have specific sessions called Actually Checking Our Work, and we'll be providing an opportunity for folks to weigh in at the end, also to see the framework that we put together in its draft form and react to it before it's finalized.
We can go to the next slide, thanks. So we'll be engaging with folks across the state in three main ways. A funding web mapping activity, we'll be doing facilitated input, and we'll be getting feedback on the draft framework that we create. In tandem with this engagement with statewide stakeholders, we'll also be doing a review of existing policies at the IAC, protocols, and the history of grant making specifically for the arts organization support. And now we'll share a few more details about how these engagements will work.
Yeah, thanks. The funding web activity sessions will identify the groups and players who are included in the arts ecosystem in India. Sorry, folks, it's morning. I'm an hour earlier than all of you. So participants in this session will really help us map both power and resources, how they're flowing between different stakeholders in the system. And there will be 3 different maps focused on influence, which you just were all kind of talking about, both influence, money, and data as well. There are 2 sessions that will have input and 1 session that will check the work, as I just talked about just a little bit ago. The map themselves are living documents that really reflect a specific perspective, obviously the collective perspectives of the folks who will be in the room at that time. And we expect that they will continue to grow with each mapping session and could potentially grow and evolve in the future if IAC decides to continue to use them. The mapping will also help us have an understanding of how equity and inequity shows up in the arts ecosystem in Indiana, where a specific group or groups have strong relationships or show a group or groups who are not being included or have sort of a lack of connection. We are also hoping that it'll unearth some groups or individuals that have not currently or historically been in the ecosystem.
Thanks. We can go to the next slide. During the facilitated input sessions, via breakout group discussions, participants will have an opportunity to provide input on how they envision a more equitable granting process and distribution. We're also, as Ann alluded to, really looking to get feedback from those who historically have not been part of the ecosystem, particularly those in rural areas or other underrepresented communities. They'll be considering how the IAC's grant making process can have an even more meaningful impact on the artists, organizations, and communities across the state. Participants will be responding to specific prompts that are critical to equitable grant making, and we will reference prompts from the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, the National Endowment for the Arts, and other grant making frameworks that exist. We'll have 3 of these sessions, and the outcomes that we're hoping to see from that is that information will help inform the draft framework that we'll be creating for review in July.
Next slide, please. And then, as Levon just talked about, we have identified criteria based on some of the resources from those 3 groups, well, more than 3 groups, but the National Assembly of State Art Agencies, the National Endowment for the Arts, and other frameworks. And then we'll be reviewing the existing policies and protocols that the IAC is currently using to do their grant making for the Arts Operating Support Program. And this will also inform the draft framework and recommendations that will also go to all of you and the staff as well.
And we can go to the next slide. The last one, the feedback on the draft framework session is really a culmination of all of these engagement sessions we will have done up to this point and the review that we received. Like the funding web equity mapping session, this session will be focused on getting reflections on what we've put together up to that point. And we will ask for your feedback on what we heard from previous sessions and if there are things that we've missed. The process will help us revise and submit the final framework recommendations that we make to you all as commissioners, and that will happen at the September quarterly business meeting.
And next slide, please. Great. So we thought we'd give you a little update about where we are in the process now that we've kind of given you an overview of what's actually going to happen. So last week we met with the IAC staff to preview the funding web equity mapping sessions. They helped to identify some initial stakeholders that will be in the map to get participants sort of started. And then we had a really fruitful conversation. They were really super excited at the end of that session about what's going to come out of that and what it's going to look like at the end. We've also, like I said, we've identified the criteria that we're going to be using for the grant making review. And we've been really just working hard on preparing the content and logistics for our additional facilitators to get them up to speed, to get ready for the mapping sessions.
So, and lastly, we really wanted folks, and we can go to the next slide. I'm sorry about that. We wanted folks to sign up and get involved. And, it was a great turnout at the town hall session that we did Tuesday. And we really did get a lot of interest from folks who were a part of that. And we're hoping to also find folks, again, unearthing these folks who are currently underrepresented, right? That's something that we're really interested in. But as of right now, we filled the first 3 sessions and the numbers are continuously growing for the other sessions. And we're just really excited to work with the Indiana Arts Commission. Working with Maya and Paige and the rest of the team has been great so far. And we're excited to do this work and to think about how to shift the grant making process to make it more equitable and more inclusive and to provide more access. Thanks.
Questions for our consultant? I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we'll take any questions you have.
So there we go. Any questions? Lisa?
It sounds like in terms of identifying participants for the feedback sessions or focus groups, we're using input from staff and then those who sign up. I'm wondering about how we're continuing to promote and communicate sign up opportunities and by what other means we're sort of recruiting participants so that we ensure we have good representation in those focus groups.
Connie, you want to say a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been doing our best to share each stage of this work through our entire email listserv. So every step of the work is being shared with everyone that we have in our network. So the next stage of that is to be shared. We will be sharing the recording from Tuesday, again, with our entire network with information on how to get involved in those next steps. I'm happy to have Levon and Ann or Paige and Maya speak about this, but another key piece of that is that after the sessions have started to fill, and some of them have already filled, another key part of that work is to know, okay, what perspectives did we not have in these sessions, and then have to seek out individuals to take part in specific focus groups where we did not have that representation in the other phases of the groups or other phases of this work. So continuing to promote, and the goal is, as Anne touched on, closing that feedback loop and making sure that people are informed about every step of the process. And that will be the goal of our communications going forward, to keep folks engaged as we complete each initial step of this and continue to communicate the findings and results of each part of this work.
Connie, you do such a great job of equipping us as commissioners with assets to amplify messaging. So how can we as commissioners assist with that?
Yes, thank you so much for asking, and we would love any support you can give, especially with the reach that this room has. And so something that I'm currently working on too, or with the support of Lucia, who has actually gotten this ball rolling. We're working on equipping the regional arts partners with some language and links for registration, and we'll be sure to share that with all of you as well, to share with your networks as we continue to promote the different stages of this. And Anne and Levon have been wonderful in helping to supply me with the links that are needed, but also working to make sure that the language is where we want it to be and that we are cohesive in the way we're communicating about it. So we'll make sure that that language gets to you as well.
That's great. Yeah, the impact of our collective social media networks could really.
That's important. Thank you so much. I'll make sure to get that to all of you.
So I assume all these input sessions are by Zoom, is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
I just wonder, and you may already be doing this, but especially in those areas where we don't serve the community, and they may not have any familiarity with us, how do we really get their attention and reach out to them? And as you were describing, some of the things you're doing in that regard, I'm wondering, I think every county or nearly every county has an economic development organization and a community foundation. And I just wonder if touching base with those folks and letting them understand what we're trying to do and how we're trying to reach out to people who may not be connected with us, whether that be helpful at all, I don't know. So
we had a really interesting conversation yesterday with the Regional Arts Partners and Angela Medical. You're welcome to chime in if you like. She's one of the co-chairs for the partnership. And also Ryan, one of our new partners from Nickel Plate in Hamilton County. They were, make sure to communicate with us. There's folks that are very reticent to take part in this process. That says to me that we need to make those personal invitations so that they feel welcome and that we need and appreciate and want their voice at the table, because it's the individuals who don't feel that they're included in this process that we need to have those voices at the table. And we may welcome, if you can tap into that network of folks, we would love to have you extend an invitation to some of those folks. And that could be in the form of an all-volunteer organization. That's one that Ann Fields Monaco brought up yesterday. They were like, well, why would I want to take part in this? This is not going to help me at all. As well as other members of the community, particular individuals of color who don't feel like they're included. That's where those focus groups really come into play to make sure that the table is open and welcoming and the feedback is candid and received well.
Yeah, Dave, to your question, when we ask folks to register, we ask them what region of the state they're in. So we know where folks are from. So first place we zoom into, of course, is geographic representation. Where are we, where do we have gaps? And then we start to look at other sort of measures and metrics to figure out where we have holes and who's around. And I would just, as a quick reminder or reinforcer, we're starting with arts organization support, but we're going to move on to arts project support. So this is a little bit like we may not find everybody or figure out all the networks we need to find everybody initially in this process, but hopefully we'll get better as we do the arts project support process to talk with those folks. And then when we start looking at our individual artist support programs, that's going to be another, way of engaging and building and discovering networks we don't know. So I think I see this as sort of an iterative process that's starting again with the folks that are, I think, the groups that are most easily identifiable as in organizational, groups, and then moving on to other constituencies. So I think hopefully at the end of this process, we will have a lot more networks that are ready and be connected with more networks by virtue of the process.
One more really good suggestion, following up what Dave was saying about where we already have points of presence everywhere. Libraries.
Yeah. That's great, Lori. Thank you.
And I just wanted to chip in my 2 cents. So, and also kind of touch base about the informal feedback questions that, we had. So like when appropriate, when we reach out through personal invitations, we can kind of ask like not only what they think about this, like ask for the opinion, but also ask how would something make you feel, or what are things that would make you feel, certain way, like happy, feel like they're included, so kind of touch base on the emotional state to like let them know that, oh, we don't just care about what you think, but also we care about what you feel, because sometimes people think that they're supposed to think and say certain things, but if we ask what they feel, then we may have diverse feedback and they may feel more included and want to chip in because they feel like being heard,
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great, Wendy. Thank you.
Great.
Other questions for Ann and Levon?
I think it's a great, first step, and it is going to take a while to build some psychological safety around this process. And I think, it feels like this is kind of a pilot to get us started. And it's just so neat to see this.
Thank you, Lisa. And Levon, anything else from you guys? They are fantastic to work with. They've been very patient with us as we've sort of figured this out. We've sort of figured all this out together. So they have been great.
No, just, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Levine.
I was just gonna say, I guess we're both raring. I'm just very excited to really connect with the folks that are in the community, that are in the arts ecosystem. And again, just really a deep interest in unearthing some of the folks who have not traditionally been touched in terms of connecting with the Indiana Arts Commission, really thinking about those in rural spaces, Black, Indigenous, and people of color around the state to really bring their voice into this project. So.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that, and I hope this is okay to talk about, but we've had conversations about offering how we can be more inclusive in terms of language. So we're working on getting certain things translated into at least Spanish. I know that the IAC team are also talking with other governmental agencies about how and what other languages, if there is anything, to just start having those conversations as well, to make things more inclusive, to have things be accessible. So we're also considering and have asked in the registration forms if anyone has accessibility or other needs as well. And I think the only other thing I would say is, these sessions are really meant to be really interactive. And the team of facilitators that we have, that I work in other spaces with, we work really hard on making these sessions be welcoming. We often sort of have folks, we actually welcome folks as they come in. We have some, to really get the feeling of warmth and community when we have these sessions. So I just wanted to give a little bit more about that, since I know that was something that I couldn't hear the name of the person that was just talking about that, but that is something that we're really focused on. And so we're excited to do this work with all of you.
Thanks, Anne.
Great.
Levon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you and looking forward to those sessions and the results, and that'll be really fun. So looking forward to it. Anything else?
I think so. Thanks, guys, for joining. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week. All right, guys.
Take care.
Thanks. Yeah, we've been pleased with the response. The first set of sessions are full and the other ones are filling. So we've been really pleased with the response so far. So
yeah, it's been really great. And then we'd originally started this series, right, where to get feedback, and then Anne, who's our primary facilitator, got COVID. So, which was actually, it worked out well so that we could do the state address, because I think that really catalyzed interest into being participating in this particular effort. And Lori or Greg, either one of you want to talk about the state address you were able to attend it, or Lisa, any comments about the address that Maya attended?
It was great to see 75 people jump on to be a part of that conversation. And good to hear some different voices. Some people are really excited. There were some people that shared that they're facing some challenges. Knowing that we have a way to provide support and being able to reach them directly, that we can do this. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think that just exactly what Greg said, and just the response, just to asking people to weigh in on that session, the number of people who spoke up, and it was great to see that they were responding positively, but it was just great to see that they were responding and were there and that number signing up. And Maya, you did a wonderful job of really articulating the direction we're going in and conveying just how important they are to what we're doing. There was this real lack of distance that I thought was very effective.
Thank you.
Yeah, the messaging was so clear and on point, and it was just a really smart, from a communication standpoint, it was just a really great way to kind of launch this, you going out into the community, and it couldn't have been any better. The energy in it too, it was just, everything was right about it. I really commend you for that.
Thanks. Well, it was a team, man. It was a team effort, I'll tell you.
Yes.
Paige and Connie worked hard to help me, help craft the message, and yeah. So
It was the right moment for you to, as the new executive director, to just position you as the face of the organization and really being clear on what our priorities are and, you know, just really effectively.
Thank you. Paige had to, full disclosure, Paige had to talk me into doing it, because I kept saying, she was like, yeah, she was like, yeah, you should, so I give her the credit for forcing me into doing it.
You know, I like to be entertained. But, you know, to me, it's a rally cry for people to get involved. And I think, you know, people want to get involved and we just need to bring them in the journey.
Yep.
Who better to do that than Maya? And plus there's so many cool things coming around the bend. So it's really exciting. I don't believe, did we have you guys introduce yourselves? Okay, good. I just want to make sure that's the impressive level of memory that I have. Details in the long past kindergartner, I would tell you volumes. So we're excited about this journey. We're ready to take it. We're on it and we're on point for the timeline. It's a bit aggressive, but we'll get there and it's extremely important. And as let's go ahead and move forward into talking about funding recommendations, because it all kind of comes together under that general category. So today we're going to be asking you to approve our funding recommendations for fiscal year 2023 for arts project support and arts organization support. We have 415 organizations and that we are recommending for funding, as well as funding the 11 regional arts partners that we have. The partnership is extremely valuable to the state and our ability to get into as many counties that we do and to have the network that we have. So they're a very strong force and we're very excited to increase the investment to our partners because we're going to definitely need them as things change and they will help communicate those changes and navigate them with these or their partners in their regions. I do want to give some basic highlights, and that is, like every year, we have a number of new funded applications that had not been in the pool before. So there is an increase in demand. 41 new organizations are being recommended for funding as opposed to last fiscal year. 12 of those are arts organization support. Those, we only had 12 apply, which is great because that means everybody else was on holiday, which means in our world, we have they go into 2 years of funding, so they don't have to submit an application every year. It has been our ongoing approach to both streamline the processes that we had and to reduce the barriers. We were thrilled to be able to bring arts organization support level 1, which is our smaller size budget organizations, into that 2-year funding. When I say 12, that's really all we had for this year. So that means next year, everybody's going to be coming into the stream. So you see where we have the timeline to figure out how we're going to relaunch those guidelines with these new recommendations. So I just want to provide a little bit of clarity on that. And if you go to the next slide, please. How are we going to address this demand? And increased demand means that we need to have more funding. Maya made note to this earlier that we reduced the funding awards to arts organization support applicants. The awards will be reduced by 5% to accommodate that growth. As for arts project support, what they requested was say $5,000. They got about 78 to 80% of that request as well. Now we did have to leverage additional federal support to be able to get to that level. We don't want to overly perturb a system, but we also recognize that the system is starting to really stabilize. Post-COVID stabilization, which is fantastic. So if we go to thinking about our change rationale, like why, okay, there's growth, but that's a little bit off the top. It's also putting more resources back to artists and communities. So we had paused the individual advancement program. We had paused arts parks and historic sites in order to maintain funding for these 2 primary programs. Otherwise, because we had that budget cut, yeah, as a result of COVID, totally understandable. Those would have gone down substantially, and we wanted to keep our most primary programs stable. But we need to return to funding our artists and communities. The demand is really high, and really it's an important component of our timing. So our budget does remain at a reduced level. I'm sure it won't for all of mankind's timeline, but especially because they're doing amazing work. But as of now, that's where we're at. So it's a very minor decrease, but still nonetheless, it will impact organizations just a smidge. And then, of course, this kind of identifies or punctuates that need for equity, because a lot of these are the same organizations that we apply, and that's not a bad thing. It's just something that we need to have a conversation with our field about in terms of what direction do we want to go to. I also want to punctuate a little bit about arts project support. And we did have a new policy this year that any applicant that had not been funded previously, if they scored high enough, they would be prioritized in terms of being funded. This was very impactful. This was very impactful into the central part of our state, which is, of course, Marion County, the most highly populated area, where all of the arts organizations are funded first, and then what's remaining goes to the projects. In this area of the state, there's so many organizations. They had like $50 left over, totally joking, but not at the same time. There was not a lot of money left over for arts project support. The majority of those that did get funded were, of course, really good grant writers. They must have been hiring Raina Bradley, but they're the ones in larger institutions. So the majority of the folks that were funded in the central part of the state had never been funded before, otherwise would not have been funded. So that's a really big deal in terms of increasing equity in just a small policy. It did feel a little pain a little bit here and there, but nothing that was insurmountable. I do want to go to the next slide and tell you a little bit about when we're talking about growth in the field and demand for these programs. It has been really strong. In just 8 years, we've seen an overall increase by 47%. So, you know, where it was in terms of how many grantees in 1 year to the next has been an increase of 132 grantees. And then for arts organization support, it's been an increase by 56%. Arts organization support, our smaller ones, level 1, went up by 78%. So we're seeing we're seeing more arts organizations coming into the structure, and that's just sort of interesting to note. So we want to make sure that we continue to support them, but how? Certainly an increased number of requests by 48% to arts project support, but not as many grantees because we can't fund them all. We just do not have the capacity to do that. And in order to accommodate that with the relative stable budget that we've had and then that slight decrease, the award amounts have gone down for arts organization support on average. 20% decrease over time in 8 years, which isn't too bad considering the significant increase, right? But that's because we continue to put more funds in, more funds. And we're trying to figure out that balance point to other priorities, communities, artists, arts education, lifelong learning, and all of those other elements. So you can see why we're really trying to delve in to figure out how we can make this equitable, stable for the long term, and still address other priorities of our agency. So unless you have any questions, I'm just going to go back to the first part of the conversation, which is we're looking for, we're recommending these grants, the FY23, arts organization support, project support, and regional arts partner recommendations for approval to you today.
Paige, quick question. In your overview, it makes note of 411 grant requests.
That's because we updated the spreadsheet, and I was like, oh, she updated the spreadsheet, and it's actually 415, not 400. So that was I didn't update that document. I didn't want to send it out to you guys again over a little bitty number, but thank you. Really detailed.
I do read your stuff.
Yeah, I know. God, yeah, usually Lori's like, oh, I don't know, that doesn't seem. Oh, Lori.
We're planting Easter eggs in there just to make sure that you're reading them.
Yeah.
Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions before page, or before page, before we move to approve? I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Lisa Abbott,
Aye.
Alberta Barker,
Aye.
Chad Bolzer,
Aye.
Raina Bradley,
Hi.
Ruth Ann Cowling,
Aye.
Dave Heist,
Aye.
Greg Hull,
Aye.
Walter Kanabi,
Aye.
Lori McRobbie,
Aye.
Kelsey Pieper,
Aye.
Ann Valentine.
Aye.
You phone folks, sorry, because this is funding, you're out of the mix, but
Ah,
feel your support coming through the phone, so,
Sorry, Jay.
sorry, guys.
rats.
I quit.
Page and staff for all the great work that you're doing in that funding area and in the equity area. That is absolutely tremendous. We've been talking about this for a long time.
Mhm.
It's great to see this in action. So thank you. Moving on now, we are having a discussion on the cultural districts and the community pathway. Okay?
Alberta, oh, Laura's going. Yeah, so thank you, Laura. I was about to jump in to say, so if we could maybe take 5 minutes, I know we've got folks that need to get out of here 11, and I think we'll still do that even with a really quick break. So
Can you point us in the right direction?
Yes. This way.
Way
down. Yeah, way down. Way down. Yeah, cheers. So we'll be back at 10:35.
Way down on the left.
Yeah.
Way down.
Follow
Straight
Ann.
down.
need to split, because we got people going all over the state today, so we need to cut them loose. But, so thanks, everybody.
So we're ready for the Management Performance Hub. That's
Actually, yeah, we're doing cultural districts. Yeah, it's all good.
my apologies.
Accelerated agenda.
I got it myself. So Paige, you're still on.
Well, so just to kind of re-familiarize everybody, we had a Programs Granted Service Committee, and I think Lori and the committee kept asking these questions, so we couldn't answer about the cultural district program. And this just seemed like, okay, that's a great catalyst to start deepening a conversation about this program. And it was, so we had the study group, and we were mindful, thinking of Anne and not providing a ridiculous amount of minuscule data. So it was Chad, Greg, Dave, and Walter who came together with us to talk about culture districts. What is it? What are the issues? What are the unanswerable? What are the questions we can't answer at the moment? And how do we move forward? And it was a really, really good conversation. Do any of you from the study group want to just provide a brief overview to your colleagues? Or I'm happy to just take it away and share everything. I can definitely do that, or you can share along with me.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
saying, okay, like that was like a month ago. I don't really, yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't remember that the Cumberland people had already been introduced, so I get it. So the statewide cultural district program has been going on under the legislation that was adopted in 2008. Some of the key questions that we weren't able to answer is how many cultural districts will we have? I don't know. And what are the impacts and the long-term benefits that we're looking for? I don't know. So, but here are some of the collected things that, based upon those conversations that we learned. It's a really valuable program, and we don't want to see it go away. So that was very helpful. And they said, and I thought this was really astute, I think we need to figure out these key questions and answer them and figure out what exactly we're doing with this program before anybody considers moving forward with potential legislation that would have a funding mechanism directly into that legislation, which is sage thinking. I also recommended that we talk to cultural districts as well as folks who are interested in pursuing being a cultural district to find out what benefits they are looking for. What are they hoping to achieve? Why do they think that this program is of value? Why do they think now that this program is important? There's certainly things that we could do to change what we are doing. We could limit the number of years that a cultural district is a cultural district. We could have a recertification process. So we took those recommendations seriously. We've already talked to a consultant, getting them under contract, and provided them the framework that we are wanting to find that information from those folks. She will do a survey and convene them and get that feedback. Also decided that we do not want to see this program go away as stated, but we do need to take a pause in terms of relaunching the opportunity for perhaps the year. Since I like to call it, we need to clean the kitchen before we so that when we do relaunch and it's all of these things are very clear. So I anticipate that our consultant will have those conversations, and that should be buttoned up by the end of July. Subsequent to that, we will get together with our study group again. And hopefully also at that time, I think Maya's and I were wanting to get some of the change ideas into place. Wendy is doing great work evaluating other cultural districts in the country, of which there were 18 programs, 18 state programs, and come up with some potential change recommendations. And also to reach out to other state agencies who could be fundamental partners with us in a tangible, meaningful way. That could be IDDC, the Indiana Destination Development Corporation. That could be the Indiana Department of Transportation. They're the ones who are all about signage. So you're on the highway and you're like, oh, culture district. Well, silage is kind of pricey, so we would love their support. So things like that, so they can come along and work collectively with us to make work on the impacts that are state impacts for sure. So are there any comments that you have about the cultural district program in terms of what you might like to see? And certainly the Columbus has a cultural district program. So they're like, well, this is news to us. So hey, FYI, you'll be getting a phone call from our consultant. Love to hear some feedback and from you all, or Kim, if you're familiar, or should I call you Amy?
I do know we're a cultural district. That's the extent of my knowledge. I do know that currently we're working with the Mayor's Public Art Committee to work on our signage project. And that's a part of that. We're working on phase 2 of our 6th Street Arts Alley, which is a part of our cultural district. We're very excited about that. We've seen some great renderings. And those are some updates for our particular cultural district, but I'd be interested to hear more feedback from the commission about their input on the program and improvement.
I think I'd also add, as you know, Wabash is one of the newest cultural districts, and we recognized our culture district just
last couple of weeks ago
with Maya, and who is now a local celebrity. They've already invited her back for a follow-up performance. But she did a fantastic job presenting commission. And there was a lot of excitement.
Yeah, there was a lot of excitement. And, you know, to what Paige had mentioned, I think, you know, and Laurie started to unearth this as we were talking, you know, several months ago in Program and Services, which is what's the value proposition of a cultural district to those that are currently designated and to those who want to be designated. So that's really what our consultant's going to be diving into, which is why does it matter to you? It was pretty clear to me when I was in Wabash what it meant to them and how they're leveraging it. But when I go to Bloomington, they're not leveraging it all, you know? So I think to Paige's point, you know, the evolution, you know, again, what is its value proposition? Is it an early investment tool, an early recognition tool? Is it a recognition tool for communities that maybe aren't thinking of themselves in that way and has more meaning to them? So it's really has opened up some really interesting conversations and a much more considerate, thoughtful conversation about intentional work, right? So, I mean, you know, right now, cultural districts feel a little bit, you know, like buckshot on a barn, a little bit related to the designation for especially some of the earlier ones. So again, we can think about how we make this designation really intentional and meaningful and help them activate and move forward specific goals. I think that's where it has real value. And so I think our consultant's going to help us at least get that sense from the current and potential ones. And then we'll figure out how we want to translate that into program changes or modifications going forward. So
great idea.
Thanks, Dusty.
Just add to that is the same conversation we had earlier about getting from individuals and artists around and communities around the state what art means to you. I think there's a similar question about what does culture mean to you. And it just occurs to me those two things can potentially absolutely come together in certain communities where culture for them, and we obviously gets to be a slippery slope because at some point here. Yeah, how do you really define what that means? And there does have to be a definition of what getting to funding. But maybe we're also talking about thinking about culture in that broader context.
That is kind of an amazing comment, Laurie, because when I was at I was followed in the dedication event by a member of the town council who was a retired police officer. And he talked about it from the culture of the community, that on Friday nights, everybody came downtown when he was growing up and there was so much activity and so much energy and he was seeing that tonight and that was so exciting. And that was, you know, that was part, he was just, and of course he wasn't coming from it from an arts background or really from an arts perspective as he was talking about it, but clearly for him, that designation had value from a cultural perspective in that it brought back the specialness, the special sauce of downtown Wabash on a Friday night when there are a lot of things going on. So I think, and again, that's so smart, because again, that's what is going to reach some of those folks, again, for whom that arts label may not be as accessible or as easily accessible as it is.
I mean, I think of communities where, I don't know how, but where construction of barns, for example, can't be thought of as an art form. And if you have a concentration of 2 or 3 different styles that are built and preserved and so forth, all of a sudden that forms a cultural identity. And if we start talking to people about that's art.
Right.
That could open up a door.
Is there a common grouping of the designated art area people that are able to share information between cultural districts as to what one district is doing that might give another district an idea for something to help ramp their program? Does that exist?
Well, we get the cultural districts together as we have them as a consortia. I think, and the intention was we get them together twice a year, and they would like 4 times a year. We just have not had the capacity to do 4 times a year.
That's good. So they share them.
Yeah, they do. But the other thing is that, I mean, the growth in arts in the state is really exciting. So it's a matter of also figuring out a way to assist communities that continue to call us. Like, how do we do this work? How do we build a cultural district? What do we need to do? And we have this, framework provided that they can look at, but they need a little bit more. So it's also, how do we integrate a process to help develop communities? How do we support that? And it can come alongside with the cultural districts to listen to them. They have the expertise. They also don't have a lot of time. So those are kind of the things that we need to consider and think about on the broader level to address the needs of the community around the state, and also balance the amount of funding or resources that we drive to one program, recognizing the need to contribute to another phase of that or facet of that, which is one of the reasons we've been talking with the Indiana Communities Institute with Fall State University, because they're helping us create curriculum to help shape things in the field for communities, and then provide some funding to support them to move forward, which would be great to link them in with folks like Fort Wayne and Wabash and Columbus, who, actually, that's a good idea. We did try that. And then, because it's really nice to also know what doesn't work to reduce the learning curve impact on other communities, right? So those are all kinds of the larger conversation that we're thinking about when we forge forward in like one program. There's always little elements to the others. And I keep looking at the clock because I know people have to leave at 11.
Any other discussion? Thank you. Okay, now we're on to Chapin for the management.
Yeah, so I will do my darndest to turn off my former teacher and debrief. Management Performance Hub, it's another state agency that we're working with. It's been a several year project coming to fruition, hopefully within the next month. And kind of a little bit of background in that we're trying to kind of expand our transparency that we share regarding grant funding. And so currently on our website, right at the top, we've got an Impact of the Arts button, of the arts, sorry, that kind of lists our priorities, and it currently only has a screenshot of kind of a summary of granting from just the most recent grant cycle, so FY22. And then from that, there's a link that you can kind of go through and filter down and see who's, again, just in the last fiscal year. So this particular project that we're talking about kind of became this massive spreadsheet of fiscal year 2004 to 22. So it's huge. It ultimately will now reaches to this not yet active online site that will allow any visitor to our website to be able to see the, basically a visual representation of that crazy spreadsheet. So, we've got a map that I can only, at the moment, click by county, but we will also have the ability to go down by region, and so be able to see granting by region again from that earlier time frame. I will add to that though, that even though the do you mind moving? Actually, well, I think I can click to it even with that. There we go. I couldn't see the data search table because of the Zoom stuff. The search option will actually reach all the way to that 2004 data. The reason I bring it up is that the map portion, so that initial, what we're calling the map page, it only will show from 17 to present. The reason for that being the online grant system that we use. We didn't start actually kind of collecting and then having available in an electronic format, things like institution type, organization type that's readily available until it was in our online grant system. So until we have the capacity to be able to backfill that information, this will only have 17 to 22. But yeah, so kind of an example of it, let's say I want to take a look at organizations. I can click and filter down from that 17 to 22 data and only look at organizations. And so I like that it prettifies it. And now we have colors that help to show what I'm filtering. And I can further filter with nonprofit or for-profit organizations. You can also similarly click into other elements to be able to look further down. So let's say I only want to look at music organizations that, let's say, I'm thinking of the county. You'll notice, by the way, that the map has reoriented. Now we're seeing only those that were awarded there. But let's say I only want to look in fiscal year 21, because down at the bottom, I know it's tiny, I've got into the room. I can see that there was 2.1 million awarded in that time frame to music organizations. So let's say I only want to look there that fiscal year. And so it just continues to filter down. And what's nice too is the gal that we're working with, she's got a little like cancel out filter next to each situation that you click in, so that you can peel off those layers and kind of get back to the beginning, or there's a clear all everything at the top. And if I click into, notice when I hover, it actually will give me more information. So music, includes band, chamber, etc. If I, let's see. Yesterday when we clicked into it, when it expanded and showed us the pop-up menu, I'm looking at page. I think that we were just working yesterday afternoon with some changes. And I think I was trying to expand an additional table that had the list. Maybe I just need to.
You just click on the grantee list.
Yeah. And so anytime that we have, when I've filtered down to these options, you can come up to the grantee list and it will show everybody that it's been filtered down to. So clearly I have clicked a lot because I'm down to just one organization. But then from there you can click into just a particular organization and it will give you the grant cycle, all the information for that. So I apologize for my clunky click through just then, but it is going to be a really exciting way for folks to be able to visit and see information at any hour of the day. And we also have, just as a heads up, there's going to be a link. You can see down here, the NPH Data Hub. So that's a website that they house, the Management Performance Hub, and it'll have a site that's designated to us where you can download the entire data set. Because unfortunately, there isn't the ability to download, once you filter down, to download just that information. But this way, it'll still be accessible again with that transparency piece. Just quick ads, if you could tell right off the bat on that dashboard, for 5 years, no funding from the Indiana Arts Commission went to Newton County. And we saw that immediately, the only county in the state. So that is something, it's such a powerful resource for us to be able to say, okay, we need to do something. We need to forge some relationships. It's also a great transparency portal for legislators, should they wish to use that, because they can immediately see what legislative district, where the funding's going, because it will include the districts when it's redistricted. And also rural, urban, and suburban designations will also be in this. So this is going to be really, really helpful for a lot of folks. It seems like, my God, a lot of data. But if you're going to look for something really fast, this is actually going to be a good tool for that. And it will be prettified like a lot more. Shape and I are going to look at different other state agencies that have super pretty portal pages with lots of lovely colors and not a big question mark. I hate question mark. Find that very stressful. So it's obviously not publicly launched, but this is going to be a really great tool for us, particularly when we think about equity. Yeah. So as we continue this journey, it will deepen. And we are having conversations with that new equity department with the state, as well as the Indiana Department of Education, and making sure we get elements included in their data sets so that folks, any citizen, can see where they have access to the arts in their area of the state. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's 11 already.
Lisa.
A really quick question. How are we communicating the rollout to key stakeholders?
So we are not clear on the timeline yet, just as this continues to wrap up, but we'll be making an announcement. We also have the biennial report coming later this year. And so anticipate, as long as the timing works out, that those two announcements can be closely aligned, and that it's, a share out of obviously the last 2 years, but a new tool that can look far beyond the last 2 years as well.
And I'm saying this out loud for the first time, so my apologies to staff for me not saying this to them, but I think we probably should do some sort of webinar training where we, sort of train the field, show it to them and click it through and show them how it works. And they probably would have come to that anyway, conclusion anyway, but that's definitely something that we will need to be doing, I think.
Absolutely. And there, it may be a little delayed. And this particular agency is going through a lot of turnover. And I very much feel for them because we know what it feels like to not have a lot of staff. So we're very cognizant of that. We're also very cognizant of the fact that it needs to be really simple and easy to use. It needs to be very intuitive. It needs to be pretty because it's the Arts Commission. So I'm fine for it to not go public until we feel really comfortable and confident with the quality of this particular portal.
It feels like the fall might be a logical time to think about it.
Report, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure our person that we talked to who's absolutely overwhelmed. Thrilled to hear that.
So perhaps at the September quarterly business meeting, we'll be ready for launch, but just wanted to give you a sneak peek. This is a passion project of Paige Sharp since she joined the commission. So we're going to bring this home one way or the other. So, and appreciate her and Chapin working with the MPH team on this because it's important. Because right now, when we need to look at grant history, we have our founded grant platform that we can look at, but we have 50,000 spreadsheets. And so this is going to be a way for us. It's going to help us almost as much as it's going to help the field, frankly. So we're excited.
Great work. Yeah. That's something that I think I heavily use. So what a great resource for committee. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, Ann and Ann are up for the Regional Arts Partnership.
Hi, everybody. This is Ann Fields Monacle from Region 4. I am the Ann without an E. I apologize for not being able to make it in person due to several logistics challenges this morning. But I do have a great report. The RAPs had a great meeting actually yesterday in the room that you are in. We, discussed quite a few things. I am in the middle of driving, otherwise I would.
Oh my God. And I don't know.
No. I'm literally pulling into a place to park. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I am not a texter and driver. I promise you that. But you guys are very important to me. So here I am. Thank you. I didn't mean to hit the turn on video thing. But anyway, sorry for the disjointedness of that introduction. The RAPs had a great meeting yesterday, and we really discussed a lot of capacity building needs in the field, as well as kind of wrapping up the panel process and application discussion from the FY23 Arts Project and Arts Organization support grants that you just approved. So thank you for that, commissioners. We are excited because we did have we finally got to meet in person with 3 of the new representatives. So you'll maybe know that John Kane has retired from South Shore Arts up in Region 1. And so we got to meet David, the new person taking on that role. We also met the new grants administrator for Nickel Plate Arts in Region 7. And then we also had two folks from Columbus Area Arts Council who have stepped into the role of administering that partnership for Columbus. And so one, it was just a great time to finally see each other because we do have our biweekly meetings that we've continued via Zoom, for the past almost 2 years, I think at this point. So those are regular touch points, but again, it was great to meet in person. We are excited to support the equity work of the commission. And so part of our agenda yesterday was talking about, any concerns we had, which I know Paige and Maya kind of brought up earlier about getting the right people at the table. And so other than that, we're kind of, helping, waiting for maybe some of the great stuff, Connie and the comms team put together to help share that and make sure, again, that we're getting the voices of everyone who we want to engage with represented in the feedback sessions that are coming up next week. Really the last thing on our report that we wanted to just let you know, we are excited that 9 of the regional arts partners are working with the IAC and the small business development group from, the state. And so we will be working through some ARP dollars that are being distributed to us to plan kind of statewide opportunities for the next level creative entrepreneurship kind of training. And so I know we have a great diversity in the disciplines that are going to be served through these workshops. They're all going to be kind of held this summer and wrapping up by the end of August. So look for that. Really, if anyone has any questions, I can take them now.
I think we're good, Ann.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience and understanding. Have a
Drive
good day.
carefully.
I will.
Okay, Dan. Okay, committee assignments, Mike.
You know what? We got people that need to get out the door, so this can be an email, and it will be. So look for me to email you about study group opportunities and commission and committee service. So stay tuned on that. Want to be mindful of people's time.
Connie, we'll move on then to old and new business. Did you want to comment about the thank you notes?
Oh, yeah, happy to put that just briefly. I know that many of you have helped us show our appreciation to panelists in the past, and we'll be continuing with that practice this year. Thanks to Lucia's hard work in putting these together and preparing. But if you have any questions about that process, the email or the letter that is attached your notes, go into detail a little bit more, but please feel free to reach out if you have questions about that, or if you need additional stationery. And we thank you so much for your support. It really means the world to the panelists to receive word from you.
Thank you for providing those too. They're very helpful. And the only other business I have is to thank Lisa. This is her last meeting. A little token.
Oh,
Thank you, Maya.
Thank you.
It's been too short, but boy, you've made a huge impact in the time that you've been.
Thank you.
It's been an honor. Appreciate your service. Wish you the best and.
Phoenix and, yeah, don't be a stranger.
Yes.
Expect that panelist call in the winter time. So never get out of being a panelist.
Good one.
Never get out of being a panelist.
The 29th of this month. Open invitation, to anybody who visits Phoenix, to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn is the best way, so I really mean it, I'd love to.
Lisa, get involved as there in the arts because you have so much to offer.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
No, it'd be a shame for you to draw back.
Yeah,
Drop in.
I can't wait to dig in. Thank you.
Certainly appreciate your service.
Thank you. It's been an
And we
honor.
will miss you.
Thank you.
Keep in touch.
Thank you.
You're always welcome.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any old or new business?
I'd just like to say thank you to the staff. I'm always amazed when I pick up this packet and realize all the work that goes into all this. And it's easy as to walk in here and sit at a quarterly meeting, but I am always amazed at the work Maya and the staff all do. And you're so appreciated. You make the arts happen for Indiana.
Thanks, Suzanne.
So
Thank you. Very much appreciated. With that, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Second. All right, quick roll call, got to do it right. Lisa Abbott, your last vote.
Aye.
Alberta Barker.
Aye.
Chad Bolzer.
Aye.
Raina Bradley.
Aye.
Ruth Ann Cowling.
Aye.
Dave Heiss.
Aye.
Greg Hull.
Aye.
Walter Kanabi.
Aye.
Laurie McRobbie. Jake Oakman.
Aye.
Kelsey Pieper.
Aye.
Dusty Stemmer.
Well, I guess I'm not voting for money. Aye.
And Ann had to step out. Motion approved.
Really?
Thanks, everybody on the phone. Appreciate you being there.
Thank you.
Next
Bye.
quarterly business meeting is in Jeffersonville, and Ruth Ann has got quite a party ready for us, so.
Ooh.